I hope you are refreshed after the lunch. And now, our next speaker will be speaking about emerging protection strategies for cyber resilience. Our speaker is the Vice President and Field Chief Technical Officer and Technical Sales at A10 Networks. Please put your hand together for Mr. Brett Lay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here back in Saudi, seeing so many existing customers, partners, and potential for growth in the region with the exciting projects that are going on in the kingdom and within all of your organizations. It's a pleasure to partner with you all and to be here this week, share some of the emerging protection strategies that we're looking at and working with our customers around the world today to benefit you in cyber resilience. My name's Brett Lay, and I look forward to meeting with you over the next couple of days. So if we look at what's happening in the markets around service providers and enterprise customers, networks are in transformation. The reason why they're in transformation is because network deployment models are changing rapidly, application strategies are at pivotal points of change, and service providers are looking at re-architecting their networks that are vastly in transition to look at emerging technologies and utilize those for competitive and business advantage. Whether it's application strategies, whether it's around how do we leverage these new capability sets around AI and large language models, and we'll talk about that, to change the characteristics of how the network both operates and is fundamentally secured. There is no longer a single perimeter. Distributed networks, distributed intelligence, distributed devices, in terms of like the decentralization and deperimeterization of all of the networks. So our customers are looking at how do they scale, how do they move the data closer to the consumer in edge computing, how do we evolve the advanced ML, machine learning techniques and behavioral characteristics and utilize and harness the power of AI to move that more intelligently and faster. And then how do we secure our workloads from on-premise to the cloud and where those are consumed. And so having a consistent security posture end-to-end from on-premise to the cloud to the consumer device is absolutely key. So network modernization is going on for both utilization and access to data, but also around cybersecurity resilience. And so how do we operate and use these AI techniques to better operate networks as well as deploy them? And how do we innovate faster pace? So how do we innovate and how do we fail fast? So the key priorities ultimately around how do we leverage ML to AI in new security use cases, and we can drill into those. How do we build out a security ecosystem architectural approach and deploy the capabilities at the points in the network and the devices and the users that require those? And fundamentally at A10, we're a strong believer in a unified management control plane approach. What does that mean? That means a single tool across all of our use cases, all of our services that can be deployed both on-prem or as a SaaS consumed service for both visibility, control, and analytics. And we'll talk more about that. And then really how do we insert into these architectures? So they're the fundamental priorities at A10 to address the trends and the opportunities to advance your network architectures for competitive advantage. If you look at cybercrime, what are we up against? The rate of cybercrime is increasing. The cost is in the trillions, has been for a number of years, but it's estimated next year to be over $10 trillion, the cost of cybercrime annually. So we all have to be more cyber secure. We all need to be more robust in terms of the architectures that we deploy, but also in a way that evolves and allows us to do business in more modern and easier ways. So in terms of building out an ecosystem architecture, whether it's both on the service provider side in terms of accessing through mobile 5G networks, fixed line internet, broadband environments, or whether it's coming into your data center from the wide area networks as an enterprise consumer, it's about fundamentally putting these capabilities in place. So architecturally, we're now looking at capabilities across all of our use cases to protect users, devices, and applications. And so as we look at these more fundamentally, let's look at the architectural capabilities, both from a how do we detect and mitigate against volumetric distributed denial of service attacks, through to the application layer, and how do we then provide application resilience by high availability load balancing, next generation web app firewall security services, L4 or L7. And then as we know, within modern application architectures today, it's all web API communications. And so looking at ways around API protection, bot management, and how these security services architect together across the environment. And so these are key areas where we can talk to you more about whether you're deploying services as a service provider or as an enterprise, looking at application resiliency as a key focus. This architecture also integrates into third parties that we also look at around cloud scrubbing services as an example, and currently rolling that out. So all of this comes under our A10 Defend umbrella architecture, open APIs, open integration into multiple vendors that we integrate with. So we can come and see us on the A10 stand just outside the door. We'll tell you more about that in terms of how we are looking at the architecture and how that's building out. If we look at A10 Control, this is an extensible control plane, visibility, control, and analytics platform across all of our use cases. So many vendors have very complex management systems, disjointed, fragmented, and what we're doing is unifying all of that into a unified control plane, both cloud-based architecture in terms of how it's been built. It's very high scale, and it enables us to build both a SaaS consumed service for cloud control plane management, or as an on-premise platform across your physical, virtual, containerized services. So form factors, physical, virtual, and containerized as well. And really it covers across the use cases, which are around our DDoS protection services, our carrier-grade networking, converged firewalls, but also around the application delivery control, the next-generation web app firewalls, and the SSLI inspection by decryption, inspection, and re-encryption. So a number of different services that we offer across our architecture, and really allowing you to integrate those services into your DevOps and application development methodologies and deployments. So this is an exciting area for us. If we look at some of those use cases underneath the unified A10 Control, unified management, I haven't got time to go into all of these today, but just things like fleet and device management, understanding what devices are where, what versions they're running, what patch levels they're at, what the configuration is, what services are turned on, what vulnerabilities exist. So that behavioral characteristics, by automatically knowing what exists, where it exists, identifying vulnerabilities real time, and being able to fix and advise those. So automate upgrades, changes, and providing more security, robust infrastructure and application security. And then on the operations side, optimize workflows, looking at the quality of service of the experience by predictive performance. And again, using very much around AI behavioral characteristics, looking at performance management and predictive performance levels, so we know how to scale up and scale back different areas of the infrastructure as we need to. If you look at Microsoft's Digital Defense Report, which came out recently for this year, looking back at the last 12 months, battling a growing threat of distributed denial of service. We're working extensively with a number of cloud service providers in this space, providing DDoS mitigation solutions and capabilities, and they mitigated Microsoft 1,700 attacks per day. Now, last year, that was nearly 2,000 attacks per day, and that was up 40% over the previous year. So 22 to 23 was up 40%, the number of attacks per day, to nearly 2,000. And now they're managing to mitigate more attacks and reduce the threat levels on those down to like 1,700 attacks on average per day. But they've invested, which is down 15%, but they've amplified their investment by tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, in order to neutralize those attacks. So for a company like Microsoft, it's investing tens, hundreds of millions of dollars into mitigating these, and theirs is only down 15%. And so we're working with these organizations around how to mitigate, how to deal with those. 20% increase in the number of DDoS platforms for hire just in the last 12 months. So you can go and rent a DDoS platform. That platform for hire is up 20%, the number of platforms just in the last 12 months. So they're new platforms, they've got new ways of attacks that you can leverage and utilize. And so that's what we are all up against in terms of working together collectively to mitigate those and provide digital defense and more robust services. Working in conjunction with cloud service providers, enterprise customers. And if you look at this report around the types of attacks and the volumes, where are the volume of attacks? Where are they trending up? Where do you need to be focused? Look at the increase in denial of service at the top and basic web app firewall types of attacks. So they're dealing both external and internal types of attacks, both volumetric and layer 4, layer 7 in terms of low volume, high number of attacks, very smart attacks on your application layers. And these are the very solutions that we have in our architecture to mitigate these types of threats for you and your environments. In our A10 Defend suite, specifically in DDoS and the solution that we have, we've got purpose-built environment, conceived and delivered for DDoS protection at scale, for large wireline, wireless, and cloud operators. I might have mentioned one of those cloud operators we're working with extensively already in this presentation. And now taking those solutions in service offerings out to enterprise customers and being able to offer DDoS as a service, working with service provider platform organizations, and being able to migrate those into the enterprise architecture environment for you to take advantage of in your organizations in various enterprise and government entities. In terms of the solution characteristics, we need to leverage the technology, leverage what's happening with the data that we constantly learn real time, and rapidly look at the evolving landscapes to protect against these new attacks and where they are. How can we block these attacks? How can we report them, learn from them, automate the reconfiguration of the environment to block them in other parts of the organization infrastructure? And we're fending off thousands of attacks a day through ML and AI behavior, characteristics and capabilities, and automating the defense mechanisms as we move forward. So being able to scale that across hundreds of millions of sessions as we roll that out, and strengthen both mitigation and detection. If we increase the speed of detection, we know we have the mitigation capabilities, both in terms of our smart application layer and also our volumetric mitigation capabilities. So couple this together as a strength and robust solution for new defense mechanisms to become more cyber resilient in your environment. Focus on continually looking at emerging day zero and zero day types attacks. Open source attack malware. It surprised me when we looked at the research how many toolkits are out there in public repositories, 400 plus that we found in no time at all. I'm sure there's far more. Attacks from IoT, and I know there's been talks earlier today about IT coming together with OT and how you merge and integrate a unified security architecture for those. How do we look at the reflection attacks, the threat environments and how they come together? Encrypted L7 attack protection, and new protocols that are constantly evolving from attackers in terms of protecting these environments. So it becomes ever increasingly harder to detect and mitigate them, but also at the velocity of these types of attacks. So the variation of attacks, the type of attacks across an ever-expanding attack surface at a much higher increased velocity. So legacy countermeasures, signatures, the efficacy is declining. It's low efficacy. Now we're able to leverage our AI capabilities built into our control plane, into our products and capabilities across the architecture to continue to evolve and reduce the threat level at a much more intelligent and faster pace. So we built this out in practice in our threat control environment across the world, across the network, across the world, monitoring DDoS attacks, tracking the attack trends, and being able to gather these data and provide it to our customers that subscribe to a service. We have a number of free trial options as well, so you can look at this service. You can see what the attacks are, where they're coming from, what country they're entering, what networks they're entering, where they're being affected, and you can find the DDoS weapons in terms of the sources. So from this, we create IP block lists very sophisticatedly, and also we have now an automated configuration capability on top of the block lists to take these attacks and be able to automatically change the configuration and protect customers' networks, so you can leverage both of those options. So, we went into a customer recently. Unfortunately, they were under attack, and we went in, we showed them how to turn on this service. We identified what the attack was, where it was coming from, how to configure the infrastructure and mitigate against it, and we had that protected and shut down in a couple of hours because we had to go through that customer manually in terms of doing that. We can do that in minutes once it's automated in terms of our threat control. So again, the threat control service, we have a number of free trials, and also you can subscribe to the service. Threat intelligence from a service provider perspective, we're able to configure this from a threat control. You can offer it out to your services, to your customers, and look at providing granular attack insights that are both actionable, high degree of efficacy, which gives high degree of confidence, and then you're able to download the latest block lists and implement those. And in addition, we're able to redeploy the automation capabilities. So if you turn on that capability, you can automate the new capabilities of protection. So this helps both service providers offer increased layers of services around security to your end customers from over and above your other connectivity type of services. So we've got managed shared services built with mainstream tier 1, tier 2 SPs around the world with thousands of customers on those platforms. So again, that's a great opportunity for you as you move forward. With that, I'd like to wrap up Thank you for the time today. There's a wealth of opportunity in the market that we all see today. There is a real threat in terms of increasing the cyber resilience of infrastructure, and also the opportunity to build services that are much easier to deploy and consume for our customers, so we can all be more secure together. Thank you very much.